Okay, this is part 3 of the most memorable lines in Nutrition and Health, June 2025. So we'll start out with T. Colin Campbell. He wrote the great book China Study, one of the best nutrition books ever written, and he did a lot of pioneering research on animal protein and its relationship to causing cancer. And his conclusion after decades of study was that animal protein is the most powerful tumor promoter. In fact, cow's milk, like casein protein, is the most powerful chemical carcinogen known to man that's widely administered at causative dosages. The amount of milk people and other dairy products people ingest are major carcinogens. Okay, that was his conclusion. He could even turn cancer on and off by removing animal protein from the diet. And then he says the vast majority of all cancers, cardiovascular disease, and other forms of degenerative disease can be prevented simply by eating a plant-based diet. You can't be protein deficient without being calorie deficient. Yep. So protein's like the most overrated thing in the whole diet. All these fat, sick, and stupid patients, they're all trying to get their protein every day. Every meal they're concerned about getting their protein. It never occurs to them that that's a big part of why they're so sick. Okay, Walter Kempner, low-protein diet lowers the workload on the kidneys. Kempner figured this stuff out back in the 1930s and 40s. Okay, he was saving kidney failure patients back then, and he wasn't giving them any amino acid supplements. Okay, here is our keto analogs that I'm aware of. Lee Hall, the more extreme the vegan diet, the more the patient improves. That's a big statement, and it's true. The more extreme the vegan diet, the more the patient improves. With CKD, chronic kidney disease, serum albumin, the plasma protein, going up is good. It means you're winning the war. But if serum albumin is going down, that's bad. You're losing the war. So basically, you want to protein restrict as much as you can, but if you start seeing your serum albumin going down, then you could supplement with essential amino acids or keto analogs, which are amino acids just with the nitrogen removed. Okay, the recommended daily allowance guidelines suggest protein intake of 0.8 grams per kilogram per day, but that's too much. Even low protein diets of 0.6 grams per kilogram per day is not enough protein reduction to really protect CKD patients that much. The best diet for CKD, chronic kidney disease patients, is 100% vegan, very low protein diet, which means 0.3 grams per kilograms per day. And those patients will, in his opinion, likely end up needing supplementation with essential amino acids or keto analogs eventually. But he's a little biased too. He runs a company that sells keto analogs. Like I said, I'm not aware of Kempner giving his patients any of that stuff. Okay, Leonard Hayflick. Human somatic cells, which means most cells in the body, but not stem cells or germ cells, can only divide about 60 times before they die. That's the Hayflick limit. And that's another reason why a high protein diet that's going to be activating mTOR, especially animal protein, is going to accelerate the rate of cell division. So it means you're going to arrive at the Hayflick limit sooner. So it basically accelerates aging. Okay, Dean Ornish. Plant-based diets and stress management help people to maintain telomeres. And this slows down aging. Delays arrival at the Hayflick limit. Telomeres are like the plastic tips on the end of shoelace. They got the same thing on chromosomes. And the point of it is that RNA polymerase can't copy the very end of the chromosome, so it shortens each time in the absence of telomerase, and it'll eventually shorten into genes that the cell needs, and then the cell will die. But when you have less stress, your telomeres don't shorten as fast. Okay, Anthony J. There's already a truckload of negative papers on soy. Yeah, he thinks soy is totally overrated as a protein source. I'd agree. Soy, if you read the old papers before all the big money got involved, it's really not a health food at all. It's something to be avoided. James R. Mitchell, PhD from Harvard, he said the less protein an animal eats, the longer it lives. And that seems to be true for humans too. He was fascinated by the Kempner diet. Okay, then he actually explained this. I had written it in here, but this was actually from the work of James Mitchell. What he said was happening was when you eat lower protein diets, there is less amino acids available to the liver. The main job of the liver is to maintain blood glucose levels during fasting, so the brain has enough glucose. And one of the ways that it does that, a big way, is it takes amino acids and it runs them through what is called gluconeogenesis to convert them into glucose. So and then push it into the blood so it's available to the brain. It's also available to the red blood cells. Red blood cells don't have mitochondria. They run on glucose. Anyways, when the body starts running out of amino acids, it'll pull fat. And what it does with the fat, it really just wants the glycerol. Glycerol is a 3-carbon backbone of a fat. You can also think of it as being propane triol. And it'll take the glycerol, and that's like half of glucose. It'll convert that into glucose. But the remaining 3 fatty acids that were originally attached to the triglyceride when it was stored in the adipose tissue, so you got 3 fatty acids bound to a glycerol. That's what a triglyceride is. Tri as in 3 fatty acids, and glycerol as in glycerol. Anyways, now the 3 fatty acids, there's really no purpose for them. So they just send them to brown fat, for example, or just burn them for energy, for heat. So the person gets skinny because they burn all that heat. Okay, and so that's thought to be what's healthy about it. And so I would add that a couple things about protein. Animal protein is more leucine and methionine than plant protein, and that's why it activates mTOR to a higher degree, because those are rate-limiting steps for activation of mTOR. mTOR is a nutrient-sensing pathway, waiting till it has adequate building blocks like a contractor before it begins to build. In other words, cause a cell to replicate. We know from multiple different types of animal studies that calorie restriction increases longevity in animals, well known in mammals. But that's starvation. That's no fun. However, research suggests that you can get about the same increase in longevity by just protein restricting, or even just restricting an individual amino acid, something like methionine, an essential amino acid, something like, or at least partially essential amino acid, something like methionine or cysteine. Low protein diets, and then we talked about how they make people skinnier. Okay. That lecture, by the way, of Paul Mitchell on this topic is available at the Wilhelmine Buchinger Clinic. Just type in Paul Mitchell, Wilhelmine Buchinger Clinic, and you'll find it. It's on YouTube. Okay, now we're going to start doing some miscellaneous nutrition and health quotes. First one is Chef AJ, eat your veggies first. Okay, that's part of her approach to losing weight. She emphasized eat your veggies first, because you sort of fill up your stomach with low caloric density foods. She emphasized eating low caloric density foods, like especially veggies. If it's in your house, it's in your mouth. So get all the junk food, processed food out of your house. Okay. Kim Williams, a cardiologist, he said there are 2 kinds of doctors, those who go vegan and those who have not read the nutritional literature. Okay, I used to think Dr. Greger said that, but it turns out Kim Williams apparently is the one who said that. Okay, Richard Moore, the reason black people have so much hypertension is because they don't eat enough potassium. It's not because they're salt sensitive. As a matter of fact, they eat less sodium than the typical Caucasian. But the blacks have much, much more hypertension, 18 times as much as hypertension-related kidney failure. And it's because they eat so much processed foods. Processed foods very high in sodium and very low in potassium. Populations who eat a plant-based diet have the same blood pressure in their teens as in their 70s. Yeah, like there was a study, a C.P. Donington study in 1929. The journal is Lancet. The name of the paper was something like Blood Pressure in the African Native. And they had 1,800 consecutive admissions to a hospital in Kenya. Not a single patient was hypertensive. None, 0. They then measured the average blood pressure of a 60-year-old man from Europe versus a 60-year-old man from Kenya. And the average blood pressure in this 60-year-old European man was 140/90, mild hypertension. In the Kenyan, it was 105/67, the same as a teenager, healthy teenager. Okay, Joel Furman. The most important thing to remember about food labels is that you should avoid foods that have labels. Nutritional excellence is the only real fountain of youth. Dean Ornish. Vegetarian diet and stress management enabled men with biopsy-proven low-grade prostate cancer to lower their PSA, or at least to keep it from increasing. Ruth Heidrich. The most common cause of disease is ignorance. It only took me 2 hours to become a vegan after talking to Dr. McDougall. Okay, Ruth Heidrich, PhD. Famous triathlete, marathon runner, long-term survivor of metastatic breast cancer. Okay, then Lorraine Day. She's another long-term survivor of metastatic breast cancer. She said, your immune system is needed by your body to remove cancer cells. Chemotherapy wipes out your immune system. Why would you want to do that? Wipe out your immune system when that's what protects you from cancer. And then she says, you aren't sick. You're not sick because you have cancer. You have cancer because you're sick. You need to learn about God's way of healing. Drugs don't work. Cancer doctors don't know what they're doing. You can tell the cancer doctors don't know what they're doing because they die just as fast as other doctors when they get cancer. God's way of living and treating disease is free, and it's available to everyone, and it works much better. Yes, you have to pay for the food, but you'd have to pay for the food anyway, so you might as well eat the good food. You also have to be religious and control your stress and get along with people to improve your body's ability to heal. I know this sounds a little scary, but I want it to scare you, because a pleased person does not change. Being scared can motivate people to change for the better. Hydration is an important part of health. Okay, Jack Delatorre, a PhD. Chronic cerebral hypoperfusion, I call them mouse equivalents, is the most common cause of dementia. Okay, I hope you found that helpful and healthy. That's it for part 3 of most memorable lines in nutrition and health.